Privyet, first of all, and that's the most of what I can speak in. Now I'm still working. Okay, awesome. So first of all, I'm super happy to be here, and it's not just because it is what most of the keynote says. Is this because this is the first conference, a physical conference, for like 1.5 years I've been to. So seeing people in 3D is just amazing. That is one thing. A second reason for that is Kyiv has a special relationship with me. This is the place I've been to for the very first Agile conference. That was 2009, so a while ago. You might be surprised that there were Agile conferences here. And the thing we have there, okay. This is me on the right side on that conference. And so I really like coming back to Kyiv. And this time, the reason I'm here this time, except that I was invited, the reason I'm here is to talk about scaling, or in fact, why it doesn't work for us. And there is a... So I'm working with the different companies, and I see some patterns, and I'm gonna share some of those patterns with you. We have like a half an hour, so now it's gonna be a long talk compressed into the very few minutes. So let me give you first idea what's the problem we're trying to solve, and I'm gonna give it on the super small company, so to make it simpler for us to understand. So here's the thing: we're building some product, whatever you have. 3 components built into this product. 1, 2, and 3. That could be anything in your system. That could be something that collects data, generates some information based on the data, and delivers this information to your customer. So, for example, collecting the usage of the system. Then you get a calculating how much the user is going to pay for that usage, and then you have a building that system, building that customer. Now, if you're a small company and you have 3 developers, then most likely they're going to work on each of those systems. The thing is, the moment you grow the company, those systems grows as well, so they're bigger, bigger, and bigger. You know that because you are there, you are creating those systems. And what is happening most likely, you're going to create more specialization into your system so people know what they're going to focus on. So you end up with, I'm going to write just with one person. So again, making it simple. So I have one developer who is specializing in component A. I have a second developer specializing in component B, and I have a third developer specializing in component C. That's not the scale yet. The thing what is happening here is one thing in every single software development, that we have more ideas than the capacity. You know that the IT is always slow. You know this one, right? Except that maybe the different one in Ukraine, but in other countries, the IT is too slow because we have more ideas. Okay, now I see some nodding. That's great. So the thing is that we have more ideas than the capacity. So each of those people has something to do in their backlog, whatever to call it. There's a queue in front of each of those people. Now, when we have some idea and it impacts B component, then who are we going to give it to? Well, we're going to give it to the specialist. So the specialist is going to have a longer and longer and longer list. But sometimes the specialist needs to have a help from someone else in the system. So he asks someone from the A, or the guy responsible for the A component, for a help. Now, the A guy is busy with something, so he gets something at the bottom of his backlog, but now someone is unhappy with this one because it's super slow, so there is someone yelling in your organization that this needs to go faster, and we end up with a few things. First of all, we end up with everybody being busy. We end up with having a multitasking. because everything here is important. So you most of your time you spend switching the context. And we also end up with having a very narrow specialization, which seems to be great, but one of the consequences of the very narrow specialization is that we lack a knowledge transfer. So this guy knows pretty well how to do B, but the moment you have more work in B, there is only one guy who knows how to do B, and we don't have a time for the knowledge transfer because he is too busy doing the work, right? And this is where many companies, when they say, okay, we want to be agile, they start here. And they basically scale up by scaling up this model. So they end up with having a component team. That could be an analyst, that could be developers, that could be a testers. So we had a few people here. Those are the people, by the way, if you don't know my drawings. So just to make it clear. Okay, so we get more people here. And I get more people here. Okay. The point is, we have a Scrum team, we have a Scrum team, we have a Scrum team. Oh, by the way, I forgot about the product owner, so I get the product owner for the A team. I have a product owner for the B team, and I have a product owner for the C team. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough money to hire Scrum Masters, sorry, because we invest too much into the product owners by now. So we end up with this kind of organization often. This is the first approach in many organizations. The thing is that from my perspective, I mean from the customer perspective, when I come to your organization, I want something that most cases go through several components. This is why we call them components, not the products, right? Because many times what I figure out is that maybe there's one feature that goes through one component, but most cases what you figure out is that you need like 2, 3, or even more. If you're working in banks or in telco, that could be 50, 60 components to be touched upon if you want to see any change happening, right? So, I don't know. Let's make it this way. No, that's blue again. That's okay. I'm going to turn it red. So, what is happening in this organization? Again, just 3 components to keep it simple. So we do Scrum, right? So we get the product owners, we had the product owners, we had the product owners. From their perspective, there is a backlog basically created from those items. And they look at their backlogs, and they say, you guys need to deliver this fast. Now, the very first sprint, the C team is taking care of these items, and yay, they can deliver something that is important. That's great. We are agile now. And now the B team don't see anything at the top, but they can still work on this item. Unfortunately, they can do just their own part because they cannot do the whole things. And the same for the A team because they can do only their part of this feature. So we end up the first iteration with having some value, but mostly, again, we have some work in progress. So this is exactly what we had here, being busy, which means we have work in progress. So the next iteration we start, and Team C take care of this item. So they finish their part, and they integrate, and what they do find out. It's not working. I mean, you've been there, right? So you build one part of the system, you build the second part of the system, and you know the integration does not work. And it's always the problem of the integration people, by the way, by now. So we have something, but it's not working. The same happens here because the the A team is taking care of this one. So because they are taking care of this one, they cannot help with this one. That's, of course, clear because they have committed to deliver something else. This is what's happening in this organization. Now, let's say who we have left. There is one more team left that start these items. So we have everyone busy again. We have nothing delivered at the end of the sprint, and so on, so on, so on. At one moment, let's say one team, the C team, they figure out they have nothing to do from the top of the organization backlog. They're going to do, but still they have a product owner that need to take care that the team is busy. Remember about this one, we need to make sure that our resources are busy, right? So what the product owner are going to do, or what the team C is going to do in this case, there are two right answers to this one. You've been there already. So one thing is we're going to do refactoring because this is the right time because there's nothing important. And we end up 3 months later doing the refactoring, but we cannot help anyone else because we are doing the refactoring right now. So please come back again in 3 months from now. This is one thing. The second option is what we can see is we're going to do this one because it's super important from our perspective. Although the organization doesn't care, but we know how to do it, okay? So this is the very common model. I'm calling this model number 1, although this is 0.1 mostly, because you can get used to new names, you can get used to using the post-it notes, you can get used to talking with the different language, but most cases, you don't end up with having a more agile organization. You still have a lot of work in progress, and the problem with the lot of work in progress is basically the more work in progress you have, the longer lead time, which basically means the longer you need to deliver a feature. So deliver a value still takes years, months, even a simple feature, because there's a lot of things that need to happen between the team. Also, the thing is that there is no single team responsible for a feature. So we need to have coordinators. We sometimes call them project managers, but basically there are people who need to coordinate the work. And we need to figure out which part of the system will be here and which part of the system will be here. So most likely we need to have architects. Then we need to have people who are going to see if it works together, because that's not the specialization of one team, but we need to make sure that both teams work together. So we're going to have an integration test team, and so on and so on. And we end up with, you still see it there? Okay, we end up with having an agile organization, just to make sure. So that's not the PM anymore, that's agile PM now. That's not the architect anymore, that's agile architect now. And that's not the testing team anymore, that's agile testing now, right? And what we do is basically we decide what to do first. We do the architecture. We do those iteration thing. We do the testing with the separate team. And, whoops, I'm out of the space. And we do the release with the separate team, and you know how we used to call it, right? It used to be a waterfall, now it's agile. We do exactly the same. I mean, again, what you're interested, maybe not you, but what your customer is interested in is how much time, this lead time, it takes you from idea, so the moment you get a great idea, to the moment I can use it as a product. This is what you take care about. This is what is important for the organization. If you don't have if you don't have this one, then creating a team, squads, whatever, won't solve your problem. So this is 1.0 or 0.1, in fact. So what we do, what we can do about this one? Well, the thing we can do is create the teams that can deliver a feature. So basically, we try to do this one, right? And we end up with two approaches. The two approaches I've seen, and this is more agile approaches. So the approach number 2, I create a backlog, exactly the same backlog as here, and I create a team that can deliver a value from the user perspective. So these are the features. These are not the components. This is the feature team. Then consists of people with the A, B, and C components knowledge. So we get the right people in the team. But because we have more than 6 people, most likely in your organization, we end up with having a separate backlogs for each of the team. So you get the teams with some, I lost the number of the legs. Those guys have more legs than the other teams. So you end up with having a few teams. Let's have 3 teams to make it simple again. And each of those teams have their own specialization. So you get the one team for search, we got the one team for ordering stuff, we got the one team for the, I don't know, payment, whatever works for you. Now, the second option we have on this picture is this one. We built a one big backlog from all those items. So I created one big item, one big backlog, which basically means I need to have one product owner, and I created teams that basically can take any item from here and deliver this one. So this is like multiple feature teams deliver different features from the different backlog. Here we have a one backlog, several teams delivering features from a one backlog. So we look at your product here as a separate products. And here we look at your product as one big product. Now, let's call it number 3. Now, the difference here. So, which one is better? This is the great question, because we can deliver features now, right? So, here's the trick. That kind of depends on what you want and what you can, right? So, this one has one great benefit. You don't need to understand the whole system. Again, if you're working in the bank, you have 60 components at least, then understanding all of them by one team is super difficult, right? So you don't need to understand the whole system by every single team in that model, right? This is super difficult, especially that if you used to work this way, then you might have one person who knows the technology X. And it's kind of difficult to put one person who knows technology X into 3 teams. That may be kind of challenging, right? Because we want to have built teams from people, not from the hard part of the people. Oh, you've been there already. I see this happening. So here's the thing. We're trying to build the teams which can deliver features, small teams that can deliver feature, but we give them still the specialization. This is easier to be done than this one. This one requires that the team need to learn how to modify a lot of components in your system. And they need to learn how to integrate those. Again, if you're working in this model, then there is a high chance that you're the only developer that touched that code base in a specific component, right? So there is no one else touching the same code as you. So you can integrate every 3 years and no one cares, right? Here, if you try to integrate at the end of the sprint, that's not going to work. You need to integrate more often. So this is way more difficult to work than this one. This is easy. This is easy. This is difficult. If anyone told you that Agile or Scrum is easy, they didn't get the whole point. It's not about being easy, it is about being able to deliver something fast enough so you get the value. Now, so what we do about this one, right? So one of the things is you need to discover, just to add it here, so we get the specialization here, but you also get the less quiet skills per team. So this is easier. And here you have a more value. Why? Because you may figure out that this team because of their specialization, again, they deliver something that is not important from the organization perspective. I mean, it is important, but not as much important as this one, right? You may figure out that this team has the most important features from your organization perspective, and this team has not. And in this model, you can put 3, 4, 5 teams on the most important things. You don't have it here. Now, how do we approach this one? So, many teams I see, they are here, and they start here. And this is the challenge we have as a team, right? From my experience, it's super difficult to move here, basically. I mean, taking your teams, taking your organization, moving it here, it is difficult. It is even difficult to move it here because, you know, Tomek, you don't understand our context and it works pretty well for us. And this is the very first conversation you want to have, right? So you start with the conversation and asking the question, is it a problem? Because if the organization tells me it's not a problem, then most likely you're not going to do the change because the change will be painful often. So you need to understand why people want to do the change, right? The second question is, basically, are we ready to make a change? So is the pain so big that you want to invest? So we get often this conversation, yes, Tomek, that will be awesome, but we don't have the time. It's too much, investment. That's too much complicated for us, so we're not going to do this one. If you don't pass those 2 points, then it's super hard to do any change. One of the things is often being the developer, being the project manager, being the analyst, being the tester, you feel the point. This is a problem with this changing the slides on the paper. You feel the problem of this model. The thing is, the moment you go to your manager and tell him or tell her, I had a problem, that's a completely different conversation when you go to your manager and tell, you had a problem. Because the question is, why this structure you have right now is a problem for your manager. And this is the conversation you need to have. You don't need to talk about your problems. You need to talk about the impact on the business, impact on the manager, impact on the situation in your organization, whatever, right? What is happening for you, my manager, that you cannot do right now because of the current situation, right? So make this problem his or her problem, not your problem. This is the very first thing. Now, make it painfully enough that people are ready, and management is ready. I often ask the question, what you cannot do, because we work in this model and you spend most of the time, we didn't put this one, coordinating. Right? There is a huge amount of coordination because we have a huge amount of work in progress. You have 50, 60, 70 features in progress. You try to coordinate this one, and you have 5 developers and 55 managers trying to coordinate the 60 features, 60 projects you have in your organization. So what is happening if you don't have this one? What are the costs for your organization? So this is one thing. The next question is, and let's start with the problem. Recently, one of the managers, he had a conversation with me about this one, and he understood. Okay, we want to switch to. Basically, he said, we cannot do this one. We're gonna do this one, and I'm gonna assign people to the teams, and then we're gonna start. And he go to the team, tells you're working with this guy from tomorrow, and you guys working together from tomorrow, and this team says, we don't think so, right? So one of the things is are managers ready, but also are people ready? So the moment your management is ready for a change, the next thing is you don't go to the team and say you're going to be agile from now, because you've been there already, because you're on this conference, so someone told you you're going to be agile by now. You need to have a conversation. What are the consequences of the change? And we don't talk only about the green side, but we talk about the red side. The red side is, for example, you need to learn a lot of new things. And management won't be making all the decision you used to be, or you used to right now, because we want the team to be making a decision. And you will feel uncomfortable with this one. Moreover, the management will feel uncomfortable with not making the decision. It's super difficult for managers to shut up on the meeting when for the last 10 years they were making all the decision. I can tell you, I'm there, I mean, not as a manager, but I'm seeing those managers struggling with, tell me what I need to do. So this is one of the challenges we have. Now, the next question is basically, what is the scope? Which basically means, are we going to do the flip in the whole organization of 500 people or not? That's basically not the best idea, right? What is the focus? Are we going to focus on 1 team, 2 teams, 5 teams, 60 people maybe? Probably trying to do this for 500 people is not going to work because you don't have enough people to help you in this transformation, right? You can ask someone from outside, but still having a support for 500 people not going to work. So we decide a few things. How many people, who is going to be impacted, how are we going to tell to the stakeholders that we're changing the way we work. So again, in this model, project managers are used to running around and telling developers what you are supposed to do. That's super frustrating for the project manager, but it's also super frustrating for the developers, right? Because each of the developers is super busy. So basically, the goal for the developer is to decide every day who I'm going to ignore today. That's the goal of the developer. So the prioritization in this model, most cases, happen at the bottom of the organization. The developers decide, I like this guy more than this guy, so I'm going to give a feature for you. This feature is easier for me. This is a new fancy technology. We call it resume-driven development, so we're going to work on the fancy technology, right? So this is what happened here. And now we need to explain to the organization that, dear project manager, you are not supposed to ping developers every 5 minutes anymore. Sorry about that. There will be a PO, product owner, who you need to talk with about the priorities, and he's to blame if he say that your project is not important. Because having a 60 project in progress doesn't mean that you're going to deliver fast 60 project. So one of the things we're going to see, or we hope to see here and here, is limiting the number of initiatives you have in progress. This is basically the whole idea. And finally, the question I would like to ask is, what are the success criteria? And what does it mean? Basically, how I'm going to tell that we succeed or not. What the kind of change we want to see, right? So one of the things I put on the scope is basically, what is the length of this experiment? By the way, we call it experiment because the moment you tell people, this is how you're going to work till you retire, they're going to say no. And the moment they're going to say no, they're going to make sure that your experiment is going to fail. So if you want to have a failing experiment, make sure that people would hate it, right? So I often say, okay, let's do like a quarter. So 3 months, because less than 3 months is too short to create a team, to learn the new way of working. Let's have it like 3 months, and let's decide how we're going to say that there is a change. And basically, I ask the managers here to define those. It kind of depends on your organization. That could be like a shorter lead time. That could be more transparency. That could be, we have plans for more than the next 24 hours in this organization. Whoa, that's cool, right? I've seen those. That could be, we have less items that are like 5 years old in our backlog, right? Or whatever else, right? There could be a specific criteria, success criteria that can be defined. Also, in those include people success criteria. So you have a business criteria, But I want to have also a people. Because the trick about Agile is because we do this for people. That can be surprising by now, but this is about people and interaction anyway. So we try to do those things, not just because it's easier from the business perspective. I mean, there is more value from the business perspective, but it's also greater for the teams to deliver a value, not part of the component, right? So we want the people to be also happy with the change. So one of the questions we want to ask in the success criteria, what is the impact on the people? And I see things like, okay, we transfer the knowledge. So there is less people with the one person knowing the one technology. People are more happy. They are more engaged. They are more self-managing. Whatever in your context makes sense. So this is your criteria, not my criteria, by the way. So this is a manager criteria I work with, not my criteria. Now, given the fact that they asked me to do the break after this talk, we need to go slowly into the ending. But few things you wanna look at. One of the things is less.works website. And this is a little bit about the less framework, which is basically based on this concept. So this is less, right? What I discover more and more often, if your organization is here, it may be super difficult to move directly here, but understanding why you want to move here is pretty good conversation. So you need to have this conversation as well with your organization. And I'd love to see you there, but often you just cannot because of the skill set, because of the knowledge, because the build takes 2 days by now, so we just cannot do this one right now. Oh, you've been there. I see that. So I want to have this conversation with the team and have this conversation with the management. The other thing is, I'm here till lunch. They offer me the free lunch, so I'm staying for a lunch here. Any question you have, just find me. I will be around. Ask me the question. You can find me on the LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. Ask me those questions. People here also have the same problem as you. The moment you ask the question, the other people hear those questions, so they can answer as well. And I guess we have like minus 2 minutes for questions, but I'm happy to take 1 or 2. Do we have mic?
I have one question. Actually, I feel the pain when you talked about about feature teams. I had a conversation with management where I tried to sell this universal team who can work on any feature. But the pain of the business is that we have competitors who can kick us out of the business tomorrow. So they see advantage of feature team which have specialization in the fact that they know this piece of code better, and then they can deliver this feature faster. And all my tryings to tell them that having those universal team will give us more safety in the future is failed.
Okay.
So how can we sell it to business?
Yeah, that's a great question. By the way, so here's the thing. The reason why we end up with the specialization is because those people know how to do it better. And it makes a lot of sense, because if I know how to do A, then I mostly do A. The point is that the moment I do A, I don't know how to do B and C. Now, the moment in the future you figure out that you want to do more A, what you do about this one? So you assume, in this model, you assume that each of those teams will be having the same value. So if we think about those as some value for the organization, then I need something smaller. What you assume is that those items will be high value, and those items will be high value, and those items will be high value. Most cases, this is maybe the true today, but not tomorrow. So what you figure out is those items soon won't be high value. Now, the question is, how do we prepare for that? Which means basically, you cannot move from here to here by building every single skill set in every single team. That's not doable, right? Even if you have 3 components, that's super hard. If you have 60 components, that's not gonna fly. But the thing is, your business knows where they're heading. And they know that, for example, for the next 3, 4, 6 months, we're gonna focus on the, I don't know, search engine because it sucks right now. So we need to build the skills for the search engine. So you don't, moving from here to here, you don't build every single skills you have. You just make sure that those teams build a little bit on the search engine skills. So they can take a search engine, the moment you grow the search engine backlog, they can start taking those items. So the point is here, we have something I call, and this is coming from here, from the specialization, knowledge transfer is low. This is something I called a knowledge debt. So we don't have enough knowledge, right? So you need to pay this knowledge debt. The thing is, at the same time, you need to deliver. You cannot say to your business, oh, guys, for the next 3 months, we're not going to deliver something because we're transferring the knowledge. That's not going to fly. You need to find the right balance between the knowledge transfer and delivery. How much time you can invest into knowledge transfer? Have this kind of conversation.